But while the so-called refeshniki were lamenting about their overpasses, which no one had actually blown up, the SBU Security Service of Ukraine carried out a truly great, perhaps the greatest act of sabotage, one that even overshadowed such a fascinating story as the one with the pagers, if you remember, the Israeli story with the pagers. And it's clear that the operation pulled off by the SBU will, of course, go down in the textbooks of sabotage work, in history textbooks, and will become the script basis for numerous action movies. It was done with desperation, audacity, elegance, intelligence, and most importantly, what is especially valued in historical contexts, with wit, devilish wit, and intellect. 4 of the most important airfields of the Russian Federation's aerospace forces were smashed at once: Beloy, Diaghilevo, Olenia, and Ivanovo. On the 20th, according to the first reports, as soon as they came in, it turned out that 29 of the most important strategic aviation aircraft were completely destroyed, just utterly wrecked. And another 11 were badly damaged. But these damaged ones can somehow be restored if they manage to beg for spare parts from, say, the Chinese. Among them are the completely irreparable 295 MS missile-carrying aircraft, notably the very ones that are capable of carrying nuclear weapons. Well, they acted not just masterfully, but in perfect harmony, striking almost simultaneously at all locations. And this was powerful also in the sense that these synchronized, almost simultaneous strikes caused an overload in the feeble minds at the General Staff of the Russian Federation and completely deprived them of the ability to respond adequately. In other words, there was nothing but panic in the General Staff. And when everything had already become clear and was revealed, I think that, by the way, I believe that the logical conclusion to this whole story would be the abduction of the head of the SBU. And after wrapping him in a carpet, the CIA agents would kidnap the comrade and try to force him to lead the NATO General Staff. Well, or at the very least, West Point, the main American military academy, because to come up with something like that, was almost impossible. The virtuosity, the effectiveness of the operation to destroy the nuclear weapons carriers was dazzling and truly unprecedented. The Pentagon was in shock, realizing now that it still has a lot to learn. It wasn't just a triumph, it was something even greater. By the way, all the details, absolutely down to the smallest details, are available on my Telegram channel, Nevzor. There you find out that part of the attack, in fact, almost all of the attacks, were carried out from trucks that were equipped with remote control. With remote control, the roof would open and compartments with drones would unfold, allowing the drones to take off. In other words, this is all a big, it's a blockbuster. It's a grand, magnificent movie. And the trucks themselves, in general, calmly drove up almost right next to the most important strategic airfields of the Russian Federation. And the unmanned aerial vehicles that flew out of them almost point blank without interference and without any silly anti-aircraft shootouts, destroyed Russia's most important aircraft, which are carriers of nuclear weapons. You can find all the details on my Telegram channel and in the statement from the head of the Security Service of Ukraine. In total, at this point, what they call 41 strategic bombers have been destroyed. But, well, this number might still increase. So it's clear that Russia has messed up in an extremely major way. They've messed up like this probably not since their retreat and flight from near Kyiv. But what worries Russia is not that it messed up. It's only worried that the mess, so to speak, spilled out of its pants and became visible to the whole world. Russian propaganda suggested executing those conscript soldiers who were making those funny circles, themselves in a state of complete shock and disbelief, showing rows of smoldering, burning bombers. Of course, they suggested executing them in front of the formation. But really, this is their response to all this disgrace. What can the Putin system do? Well, of course, it can't offer anything new. The Putin dictatorship has only one single type of reaction to everything. Because the Kremlin has absolutely zero intellect or imagination. And it's always just senseless repression. That's their response to any process they don't like or any event that's unpleasant for them. And by the way, in this case, that's actually a good thing. That's good. Because there's hope that Putinism will finally lose all restraint and start devouring its own, searching for flaws and reasons behind these humiliations and its endless fiascos. The orcs will become even more vicious, crushing and gouging each other's eyes out. Well, and the well-known procedure of cutting off ears, once just a special forces amusement, will become standard practice at every interrogation. In other words, the repressions will intensify. The Duma will pass it, and the Kremlin patient will sign it. And of course, it's high time for the regime to move from words to action. And those servants of the Russian world who will be weeded out and tormented, they really don't deserve any pity at all.